there's never going to be a perfect time to write a book. I know for a lot of people, writing a book, it's on the maybe someday list. It's on the maybe next year list. And we just keep kicking the can down the road, and there's never going to be a perfect time. You're going to have to get started before you're ready.
Welcome to the Sidehustle Lounge. If you're looking for flexible ways to earn income, grow your mindset, and live the lifestyle you've always dreamed of, you're in the right place. So lower the lights, grab your favorite beverage, and join your host, founder of NotaryCoach.com and Amazon best-selling author of Sign and Thrive, How to Make Six Figures as a Mobile Notary and Loan Signing Agent, Bill Soroka.
Right, cheers, and welcome to my next guest today, Chandler Bolt, the founder and the CEO of selfpublishingschool.com. Chandler, thank you so much for being here.
Bill, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I have been, first, I'm totally honored that you're here. I'm a little bit starstruck even because you have made such a difference in my life. And guys, if you don't know Chandler Bolt yet, you're going to want to know Chandler Bolt and what he's up to. So get in his orbit. You know, Chandler, I consider you one of my top 5 most influential people in my life. You've made that big of an impact on me. You know, I got people like Hal Elrod, of course, The Miracle Morning, Brene Brown, who's pulled me through some hard times, Oprah Winfrey and Brendan Burchard. And you're at the top of the list with Self-Publishing School and everything you helped me get through.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. That means a lot.
Even in my book, and I don't even think you realize the full impact of that, but what you've created through Self-Publishing School and your books really paved the way for someone like me. I know I'm not your poster child for the 90-day book writing or even the 30-day book writing, because it took me 3 years. But I remember every day seeing your smile and your optimism and everything that you offered in that course, and it really pulled me through. So thank you for that. Truly appreciate it.
That's awesome, man. Congrats on all the success with the book, the business. It's been cool kind of seeing just over the years that just continue to expand and grow. It's been really cool to watch from afar.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're talking about here today. Writing a book changed my life. I don't think people realize what goes into having to do it, but you've really built a framework for people to figure that out. So when you, so they hear it from somebody else, why should somebody even consider writing a book?
Yes. I mean, I think there's a ton of reasons. I mean, first of all, I think the books change lives, right? Like you said. So books change the lives of readers and books change the lives of authors. So probably everyone listening to this right now, or just about everyone, has had their life changed by reading a book. And then we also say, books change the lives of authors. And so it's not about the book, it's about who you become in the process of writing and publishing that book. And so I talk about this concept called leveraged impact. The ability to do work once, and then that book goes on to impact thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people. So I think it's one of the best ways to grow your impact, to grow your income, and to grow your business if you have one. And really the ability to do work once, crystallize the information that you know and that you have into a book. And then wherever that takes you, whether it's, hey, this is a passion project, this is just for my kids, whether it's, I want to practically use this to grow a business. Obviously, that's kind of my bread and butter. Anywhere on that spectrum, I think it's one of the best things that you can do to create an asset that's going to be here long after we're all off this earth.
Yeah, so we're talking about impact and legacy almost. How do you convince somebody who's absolutely sure they don't have a story to tell that somebody would want to read?
I would say I have this concept. It's called the Idea Finder. So this is, I got a new book that just came out, and this is, I want to say chapter 3 in the book. Chapter 4 is coming up with what to write about, because this is pretty common. Either you're in one of 3 camps. Either you have an idea and you know what you want to write about. You've got no idea and you're not quite sure. You're thinking, man, I can never write a book. Or camp 3, you've got way too many ideas. And either way, you got to narrow in on your book idea, right? And so to speak specifically to what you said, if someone's thinking I couldn't write a book, or I don't know what I would write about, I was exactly in that same boat. I mean, I'm a C-level English student and a college dropout with ADHD.
Trifecta.
So kind of the last person you'd ever think would write a book. But I would say, so there's what I call the idea finder. It's really just a handful of questions to get you thinking. So question one is, what do you get paid for, or what's your expertise? So you run a job, or you run a business, or you work at a job. That is the best place to start for most people. Then there's a couple other questions, like, what are you passionate about? What do people come to you for advice on? What is there a shared experience or experience that you have in your life that you can share with others to help them? And then lastly would just be, if you run a business, or even if you're in sales or customer support, what are the broken record conversations that you have with every new client or new prospect? And chances are, in those broken record conversations is a really great book that'll be one of the best things you could ever do to grow your business. And it'll keep you from having to repeat yourself and save you all sorts of time working with new customers, like just across the board.
Yeah, excellent advice. So what happens when, all right, somebody figures it out and they think, all right, I can write about this. People nag me all day about this. I think that's one of your gifts here, is you built a framework. So how does somebody actually go through the process of writing?
Yeah, so we kind of lay out this out in the new book, and it's also kind of, as you've seen, the fundamentals of the program is we've got 8 milestones. It used to be 10, but we've kind of simplified it down to 8 now. But so the first few are really how you get started, and so it starts with what I call the more writing method. Okay, and the more writing method, more is an acronym, and step 1 is to create a mind map. So this is a brainstorm around all the ideas or topics you could write about. So if you're listening to this right now, I would encourage you to, if you go and grab a piece of paper and set it aside. And as soon as you're done listening to this episode, take 15 minutes on the clock and write out everything that you can think of on the topic for your book. That's the mind map. And so you've got ideas flowing. So these are ideas, stories that you have, lessons that you've learned, books that you've read. And that for me was the big difference to getting started, to I could never write a book, to, oh man, there's actually something here. And then I can build on that content. So the M stands for mind map. The O stands for outline. So turning your mind map into an outline. So you're going to start to group groups of ideas into groups or sections. And so from your mind map, you'll probably pull out about 5 sections. Well, then you order those sections in the order that you want to cover them in the book, and then drill down about 3 chapters per section. So now all of a sudden you've got about a 15 chapter outline that you can use to write your book. And I'll come back to the kind of the writing part in just a second. But so mind map, outline, the R stands for rough draft. That's the number one most important thing if you're trying to write a book is get your rough draft done as quickly as possible, right? But when you do that, you're going to start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you're going to start to believe that this is possible. And then the E stands for editing. And so you'll do some self-editing at the beginning, and then you'll pull in a professional, but that's the more writing method. So mind map, outline, rough draft, editing. And then if we want to zoom in a little bit, the rough draft specifically, you'll do that 1 chapter at a time, and you'll mow down your rough draft 1 chapter at a time. So this is kind of another acronym, but MO is mind map, outline, write. So 10 minutes mind mapping everything you can think of on the chapter, 10 minutes turning that mind map into an outline, and then 45 minutes to an hour and a half writing the chapter. You'll repeat that process chapter by chapter by chapter. Or if you speak better than you write, then you'll mind map, outline, speak. And so either way, you can go, 2 to 3 hours per chapter writing, or 30 to 45 minutes per chapter if you're speaking the book 1 chapter at a time.
I think that's a really powerful distinction, because there's technology now that makes speaking your book so much easier than it used to be. So do you have a particular software or a direction that you would point somebody who just wants to speak their book?
Yeah, I like rev.com or the Rev app, rev.com. I think that's one of the better ones. There's automated transcription services that are free. That one is paid. But then they also have the human component too. So I like that because you get a higher quality transcription. If anyone out there has trouble talking to Siri, I've got a little bit of a Southern accent, so Siri doesn't always understand me. Then human transcription is a little bit more helpful because you just have less editing on the back end.
Yeah, great suggestion. And this whole process, I love. Just that little 2 minutes that you just spoke, really, I could replay that for so many people that come to me and ask, how did you write a book? How did you write a book? the mind mapping part is a game changer. And for me, I love giant sticky note paper, right? So I would cover my walls with the different mind maps and just do that on every single chapter. And that really did advance the book further than I think I ever could have done on my own. I wonder if you can tell us, though, because this sounds super simple, right? Just mind map, outline, right. But what do you have to say about the resistance that comes up during the writing?
Yeah, it's going to come up early and often, and so I would say just a distinction is it's simple, but it's not easy, right? And so this makes the process as simple as possible. But at the end of the day, writing a book is hard. It's difficult, right? And so resistance, the word that you used, I had Stephen Pressfield on the Self Publishing School podcast. He wrote a book called The War of Art, and he talks about resistance. And I think that's one of the best books on writing, and just the craft and all that stuff that exists. But it's, there will be a lot of resistance early and often. And that's why for so many people, I recommend just laser focusing on the rough draft finish line. And there's that. And then there's making consistent daily progress. And so a lot of times I'll just say, hey, what's the minimum commitment that you can make to yourself daily? We have this 30-day rough draft challenge. Some people will say, hey, I want to write a rough draft in 30 days. Some people will say, hey, no way. I'm going to do a weekend and then maybe my goal is to do it over the next 6 months. Whatever that is, you need a plan, and you need to create a plan, and then you need to set aside time daily. And so basically we just create, and I don't think you've ever seen this, Bill, unless you've already been reading the new book. But there's the 30-day rough draft challenge is chapter 7. And then I go into this, we've got, it's an actual challenge. So now it's kind of cool. So basically for 30 days, you do these 3 things. All right. So number 1, you have 2 30-minute writing sessions per day using the Mindmap outline write process. Number 2, and that's really the core of the challenge. But then number 2, you screenshot and post your word count daily. So there's kind of some daily accountability. And then number 3 is a daily celebration or reward. So kind of using Charles Duhigg, or I think it's Charles Duhigg, Power of Habit, the cue routine reward.
Yeah.
And so you're building, that's how you build a habit, is you actually celebrate or reward yourself for hitting that goal daily. It's like that unlocks a celebration. And so that's the 30-day rough draft challenge. We've only got 3 rules. And you've heard at least a couple of them, but rule number 1 is no editing while you write.
Yeah.
We all know someone who has 5 perfectly written chapters in their unfinished book. And then rule 2 is you can only work on 1 book for the entire 30 days. So only work on 1 book at a time. And then rule number 3 is if you miss a day, you start over from the beginning.
Wow.
So it's a true 30-day challenge where you're saying, I'm going to commit to writing daily for 30 days straight. And then you do the process that I talked about at the beginning of this to set yourself up for that challenge. So you kind of got a mind map and outline for your book, and then you plug in daily and make daily consistent progress.
I love it. I got 2 questions for you. So for somebody who thinks 2 30-minute time periods might be too much to commit to, what is the minimum commitment that you've seen work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say minimum commitment is like 15 minutes a day, or something like 100 or 250 words per day. And that's the kind of the slow and steady approach, but it's a no matter what. It is a no matter what, I am going to send 15. And so just that small act, it may feel like it's taking you longer, but that will be countered by the fact that you feel like you're actually making consistent progress. And every now and then you'll go for 45 minutes and you might get 1,000 words done or something, and so then you feel really good about that. But just knowing that, hey, no matter what, if I'm writing 100 words a day, then every 10 days I'm going to have 1,000 words. And every 100 days, I'm going to have 10,000 words. And so then what's that? 300 days is 30,000 words. So, I mean, in a year's time, you're really going to have about the length of what a full book would be just by writing 100 words a day, assuming that you never go over that. Right. And so that is kind of the slow and steady approach.
How do you how do you help coach people to stay connected to the vision or the why, like keep them going on this?
Yeah, I think it's an important place to start. It's the most important thing in my opinion. That's why it's the second chapter of the new book, and it's the very first thing that we talk about with our students is, as Stephen Covey would say, begin with the end in mind, right? And so start with why you're doing this. And I recommend actually writing it out and having it on the wall so that you see it every day. So you've got your why and you've got your plan. And so why does this, and I think it's important too, and I kind of outlined this, but it's, I think there's the dual why, right? Which obviously everyone's listening to this. I don't think anyone can see this, but so there's the, why does this matter to me as the author? And then why does this matter to the reader? And a lot of people will think only, which is it's very important, obviously, like, okay, why does this book matter to the reader and how will this help them? But then there's the, why does it matter to me? As the author. And I think that's really, really important. And there's maybe the surface level why, which is like, oh, this is going to help me grow my business, or this is going to help me bring in passive income or royalties or whatever. And then there's the deeper why, which is like, okay, there's a why, and then there's a why now. And it's why is this something that I need to do now? And this is something that is meaningful to me personally. Maybe that's to pass this down to my kids. Maybe this is part of my legacy. Like, what is that why? And then that coupled with just a concrete goal and plan and next steps and all that stuff, it will be the big thing that helps people kind of keep going when the going gets tough, because it will get tough.
I think that's such great advice, because in my experience, writing a book, there's a certain level of vulnerability that happens here, especially if you're sharing something. And every bit of resistance that can come up, every insecurity you've ever had, the voice that says, who do you think you are? All of that is going to come up during this process. And having a very clear idea of the vision and the legacy you want to leave behind makes all the difference. And you have to remind yourself every single day. If you're writing every day, you have to remind yourself of why this is important every day.
I agree.
The other thing that I used to do too is, because my inner critic was a real bitch there for a while.
Yeah.
And I would listen to The Man in the Arena, or I would say The Man in the Arena, not the critic that counts, every day out loud in the shower to help get the courage and the momentum to go through it. Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome.
So when somebody, I think, oh, no, there's one other question. You mentioned it. I have to ask, because this is the biggest stumbling block I've seen with people, is the editing while they're writing, or self-editing while they're writing. What advice do you have about that?
Don't do it. Fight the urge. It's so do not edit while you write. Like, this is so important. That's why I said we all know someone who has 5 perfectly written chapters in their unfinished book. And maybe that's you listening, right? And if you're feeling convicted right now, that's probably a sign that that's something you need to stop doing. Because it is more important. Like, my finished rough draft is better than your perfectly unfinished draft. And so that is just so important, because you're going to, like I said earlier, you're going to start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So practically what this looks like for me personally is I'll just make notes and just keep going. It'll be all caps and in red, like insert story here about blah, blah, blah. Or like little pieces. I'm like, I don't really have that right now. And that would send me on a whole research tangent. And I'm in writing mode right now. I'm not in researching mode, and I'm not in editing mode. And so I need to write. My job right now is to write. And so that would be my recommendation for folks is when it is time to write, you write, and when it is time to edit, you edit. And there will be multiple rounds of self-editing. You'll pull in an editor. The editor is going to make your book better. They're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you on that sort of thing. So you're really just wasting your time, and you're delaying getting your rough draft done, which for the 5,000th time, is the most important thing. And I just stress this because we see so many times with students at self-publishing school is that is kind of our internal metric. And we're trying to figure out a bunch of other stuff like, okay, are there leading indicators to that we can control? And then we can, if someone's stuck in this phase for X amount of days, we call them or we book another coaching call. Or like, we're trying to figure out how to really just up level all the support that we give people in that part of the process. Cause we found that once they get past the rough draft, I mean, those people are exponentially more successful, and the people who don't, they just fall off. They just fall off the trail. And and don't get their book done.
Right.
And so that is really the most important thing. And I would rather have a rough draft done that's not as good that I can then read through multiple times and make better. Cause I found that is like the best way to edit, not just in time. Cause you might be editing something that gets cut or that's going to be better in chapter 21, but you're writing it in chapter 4.
Right.
Right. But then you don't know that. It's like a painting until you step back from the painting and say, oh, that's there. This, okay, I need to touch up this. I need to change this. And so then you're able to start making improvements.
Yeah, that's so true. I learned that the hard way. I think that's part of the reason that the book took 3 years to write instead of the 90 days. Well, and I think too, there's still a huge misconception about self-publishing or just publishing books these days, right? Like people, I don't think realize that there's tons of resources. There's an entire industry. There's editors like ready and waiting to help you refine your book and make it better. There's still this belief that you have to get an agent or you have to submit a manuscript for approval and things. Do you have any advice along those lines?
Yeah. So, I mean, for 99.9% of people, it makes more sense to self-publish. The only time it potentially makes sense to traditionally publish is if you're a big name with a big audience and you can get a big advance. Then there's pause for consideration. Outside of that, it's just, it used to be, like you said, the only way you sold books was to get into bookstores. The only way you get into bookstores was to have a publishing deal. The only way you could do that was have an agent. It was like all these gatekeepers. But now 70% of all books sold are sold on Amazon, and you don't need a publisher to publish on Amazon, right? So you do need a plan, but you don't need a publisher. And that's the big thing is you need to be intentional about the marketing, but you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to do that no matter what. No matter which route you take, you're going to have to put together a plan and execute the marketing plan. And so I think self-publishing makes more sense for most people for those reasons. There's a bunch of other stuff like royalty rates and how much it costs and the time it takes to go through the process. But that's the long and short of it. I think
I'm glad you brought up marketing because I've been in my community. We have this incredibly loving and supportive community, and there's people rising up with their expertise and sharing it. And a lot of times I've seen that they get so excited. They've overcome everything that we're talking about. They got through the resistance. They wrote, they had it edited. They came up with a beautiful cover. And then they're so excited. They just post it on Amazon and it's published. And then it's like crickets. Like nobody's buying my book. Nobody's hearing about my book. And I think one of the gifts of your strategy and your programs was your launch strategy. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, it's something we take very, very seriously. And I think there's 3 phases of this. So there's pre-launch, there's during launch, and then there's after launch. And marketing starts when you pick up the pen. You just didn't know it yet, right? And so how do you write a better book, a more specific book, a more helpful book that solves a specific problem that people know that they have? And then there's the actual launch stuff. And then there's post-launch, so I kind of broke this down in a few different parts, but there's a few sections of the book. You've got your pre-launch prep, you've got your how to actually launch, and then there's selling books after the launch. And so the selling books after the launch, and I'm kind of all over the place, but I'll land the plane in a few different places. So there's what I call the 1-year launch, which is that most people take the Lamborghini launch approach. If Lamborghinis are fast, they're sexy, they use up a lot of fuel, and they're gone in a flash. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's the way most people treat their book launch is they focus on 1 week. They put all of their eggs in that basket and it's gone in a flash. It's all kinds of energy used up. I'm in that right now as we're recording this episode, it's the launch week for my book. Right. But I am focused on building long-term assets, and then I will roll into long-term marketing assets, and then I will roll into the 1-year launch, and I'll be promoting this book for the next year and years to come. And so that's the post-launch. But then when you look at the actual launch itself, I call this the launch triangle. There's 3 things you really need to nail. So number 1 is creating a launch team.
Yeah.
And so this is a small group of people that support your book. It could be 15 people, 50 people. I've got about 150 people on my launch team right now. And so I'm running the launch team. So number 1, you've got the launch team. Number 2 is getting reviews. So so at least 20 during launch week. And my goal would be closer to 100. That's very hard. But at least 20, and then preferably closer to 100. And then number 3 on that launch triangle is promotions. And so this is the part where, we've kind of got 2 launch strategies. There's what I call the MVP launch, which is your minimum viable product. And then there's the traditional launch, which is kind of just the full out. And so the promotions are the biggest piece. That's kind of an accordion based on the time that you have, the money that you have, your resources, and how big you want to go with this book. So that's kind of you can accordion that based on those things and based on your goals for the book. But that's the launch triangle, and then why it matters to keep marketing the book after launch. And then also the first piece, which is marketing starts when you start writing the book.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest lesson for me is, I was almost experienced this relief, like, holy cow, I wrote a book, I went through it and published it. And that's really just the beginning. When that publishes, then the real work of getting the word out, getting the reviews, and then going on podcasts, going on Zoom calls, speaking tours and things like that, or whatever dials into it. But what I love about your system is you spell that out. And even if somebody's listening right now thinking, holy crap, I don't know what all that means, this is all spelled out really specifically in your book and in your course. So the people who are listening right now, a lot of them are solopreneurs, Chandler. They're service providers. I have a huge notary community. We've got other credentialed professionals. How can they leverage a book to help grow their business?
Yeah. Oh man, I love talking about this stuff. So, this is exactly what I'm doing right now. And I think a book is one of the best things that you can do to grow your business. And I look at, using a book to grow your business in 3 ways. Really a book is going to help you get more leads. It's going to help you get more sales, and it's going to help you get more referrals. And so leads, these are people who hear about you because of your book, and they would have never heard of you without the book, right? If you think of Russell Brunson and ClickFunnels, right? Like a lot of people would never heard of ClickFunnels without reading his books. And there's the same way with me with Self-Publishing School. People will read my book published and they'll say, oh, this is interesting and helpful. I want to work with Self-Publishing School. So you get more people that hear about you because of your book. Then there's more sales. So my recommendation would be to use the book in the sales process. And it's going to lift every part of your sales funnel. So whether it's people who hear about you opting in and giving you like leads, so there's traffic, then there's lead capture, then there's getting those folks to book calls, I'm assuming, for some sort of sales mechanism. And then then there's getting them to show up for that call, and then there's getting them to buy on that call. And so you can use the book at any and all of those points in the customer acquisition flow to increase conversion. The root word of authority is author. And you can't spell authority without the word author. And so you become an authority when you become an author. And so that helps just lift the whole sales process. And then referrals, using a book to get more referrals. Maybe you've heard the saying, a book is the new business card. It's you hand someone a business card, they're going to throw it away within 24 hours.
True.
I don't want to offend anyone, but that's just the truth. we're throwing away those business cards, unless you're weird and you're hanging on to them, or you're just very diligent. But if you give them a book, they're not throwing it away. They're keeping it in their home, in their office. Every time they see that book, they think of you. And so one of my favorite things is giving away 2 copies of the book to every new prospect or new client. And you say, hey, here's one for you, and here's one for a friend who needs help with insert the problem that you solve, right? And so now all of a sudden, this book, I call it a silent salesman. It's going out into the world, and it's bringing back leads, sales, and referrals. You're turning customers into active referrers, and it's teaching your methodology, and then helping you grow your business in the process.
That is brilliant. I love that 2 copy idea. That's great.
Yeah. Especially in brick and mortar businesses. I mean, works unbelievably well. We had a guy, he was a chiropractor in Canada. He grew the largest chiropractic clinic, I think, in Canada. And he said he did exactly that. And he said he gave away 1,000 books in 1 year and got 260 referrals.
Wow.
It was like 26 referrals for every 100 books that he gave out. And I mean, the book costs you $7, $8 all in. And so what would you pay for leads elsewhere? And not only that, but I mean, it's just a way more qualified lead because they're learning about your methodology, and by the time they come to you from that, they're saying, hey, this looks really interesting. You're the obvious authority on this. You're the person I need to work with. How do I sign up?
Exactly.
Which is just a totally different conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. It does all the heavy lifting for you. They're ready to buy by the time they get to you. So when did you publish the first time? When did you publish that?
Yeah, the first edition was published in 2016.
Okay.
So it's been about 6 years. And yeah, that was the first edition. It's been downloaded and purchased 100,000, if not hundreds of thousands of times over the last few years.
Well, that's how I came into your orbit. So this is like our relationship is exactly how this is designed to work, right? Like I bought your book because anytime I need to figure out something, I buy a book. And I was like, all right, this makes sense. And I think I started following you on social media. And then I finally pulled the trigger, I think in 2016. I felt like I was in there before, but it was 2016. Yeah. Took me forever to write that book, but finally did it in 2019. But I mean, I went into self-publishing school. We met in person at Author Advantage Live in Austin. That was life changer, game changer for me too. But I think that's a great demonstration of the power of a book like this and what it can do for your business.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. That's so cool. And so cool to see, I mean, a live case study because it works, right? And when I say books change lives, right? Like books change the lives of readers who then in this case go on to write books, and there's kind of this butterfly effect,
right?
Of changing lives and growing your business and growing your impact in the process.
Yeah. So awesome. What a great way to close us out, but I want to give you the opportunity to leave us with any parting advice for any would-be or could-be authors listening.
Yeah, I mean, my parting piece of advice would be there's never going to be a perfect time to write a book. I know for a lot of people writing a book, it's on the maybe someday list. It's on the maybe next year list. And we just keep kicking the can down the road, and there's never going to be a perfect time. You're going to have to get started before you're ready. And it all starts with, like I said earlier, I would just encourage you to do the homework and don't just be inspired from this podcast interview, but actually implement it. I'll talk about in a second. I've got a book giveaway of the brand new edition of Publish, but really just the most practical thing that you can do is just as soon as this is over, as soon as you finish listening to this podcast, is do that Mindmap exercise. So put 15 minutes on the clock, grab a blank sheet of printer paper, put your book topic in the middle of the page, and then set the timer and start mind mapping. I think you'll be surprised by how much knowledge you got in that noggin of yours that you could use to write a great book.
Yeah, great idea. And let's tell them about the book giveaway that you're doing. Guys, when you hear this, you're going to find everything you need. I have the links at sidehustlelounge.com/VIP. So you can check this out. Chandler, what are we doing?
Cool. Yeah. So, Bill, so I wanted to give away 50 copies of of my new book. So, brand new book just launched a few days ago as of the time of recording this. And so it's called Publish: The Proven Path from Blank Page to 10,000 Copies Sold. It's a comprehensive 10,000 foot view at the process. It's really, really helpful. And so if you'd like to get a copy, you can get, so obviously you can get it on Amazon or anywhere books that are sold. But what I want to do is give away 50 free copies to your audience, Bill. So this is for the first 50 people. Go to this link. It's publishedbook.com/Bill. Okay. Published, like I published a book, publishedbook.com/Bill. And, like I said, first 50 people, there's no strings attached. I will literally print, pack, and ship a book to your door. No credit card required, no shipping and handling, no nothing. Just a free book. Just to say thank you for checking out the book. And, hopefully that can help people get started on their books.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's so generous of you. That's awesome. And I remember, and I've already started reading this book, and it is packed full. I feel like I'm reading it again for the first time, and it's firing me up because I'm in the process of writing another book right now. I'm like, overcomplicated this thing again. I'm really good at that. I can overcomplicate anything. So I'm going back to basics with this framework for the next book too. So thank you for that. And if you're listening, that is publishedbook.com/Bill. And you can go to sidehustlelounge.com in the VIP room. And I'll have that link in there for you as well. Chandler Bolt, this has been a true pleasure. And I'm totally honored you're here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Bill, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for reading the new book. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. For terms and conditions, as well as more information on whether the Notary eJournal is compliant in your state, visit the home of the Notary eJournal at www.juratinc.com. If you're a notary public, the future's here. Long have we been confined to pen and paper when it comes to our journal entries, and those days are over. The Notary eJournal by Jurat Inc. is a smartphone app that completely digitizes the journaling experience. You can quickly populate fields with an ID scan, you can make detailed notes about your appointment experience, and you can capture signatures electronically right on the screen of your phone. The Notary eJournal has also blazed a trail with the industry's first integration of a Bluetooth scanner, so the modern notary can actually capture a signer's thumbprint, making the Notary eJournal compliant in nearly every state, including California. Even if your state doesn't require a journal, it's considered a wise and best practice to do so. A journal can be a notary's BFF, as my friend Laura Buer says, and you might as well be on the cutting edge of technology while you're using it. The Notary eJournal, it's simple, secure, and pretty damn cool to use. Your customers will love it, and you'll love the time you save at every single appointment. And time is money. Check out the demo and the incredible special offer just for supporters of the Side Hustle Lounge and Notary Coach at www.sidehustlelounge.com.